Hey there, I'm Bex. Thank you so much for checking out my very first YouTube video. I am so excited to start uploading videos and share my art journey with you all. There are so many inspiring artists on here that I've watched over the years, and I'm really excited to become a part of the YouTube art community and bringing you some fun videos. So, for my first video, I decided to keep it chill because I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to video editing and filming and things. So, I've decided to share a sketch with you. I find sketching in my sketchbook really relaxing because you don't need to worry too much about how the end product turns out. So for this sketch, I decided to draw one of my absolute heroes, Kyle Gass. The reason that I picked him as my subject is that I really struggle with portraits and I've been wanting to practice them for a while. My favourite things to draw are wildlife, and I love painting landscapes and using lots of colours and things like that, but you know, if I'm going to improve my art, I need to work on the things that I really suck at drawing. So this is one of them. And I'm glad I've done it because I actually think the result turned out a lot better than I initially expected. So I started this portrait by looking very carefully at my reference and spending some time mapping out the features of the face. So paying close attention to the distance between the chin and the mouth and the nose and the eyes, the brow line, and the top of the head. I also paid close attention to the angle of the head. This took me a little while. I feel like if you spend a lot of time on this part at the start, you'll reap the benefits later in the sketch process, and it will save you a lot of time in the long run. That's just from my personal experience. So I've tried using drawing books and things to help me with drawing heads in the past, and I have to say I've struggled quite a lot. I've managed to produce decent drawings of heads, but they haven't quite captured the likeness of the person that I'm trying to draw. So this is something that I have struggled with for a long time and that I am really focusing on trying to get better at. Very recently, I started paying more attention to the lights and the darks on the face. So really looking at the values instead of studying, the eyes specifically, like how to draw an eye, how to draw a nose. I kind of feel like sometimes I draw the idea of what I think a nose looks like, and I kind of stop paying attention to the reference and I kind of lose that likeness along the way. But with this method of mapping out the lightest areas and the darkest areas and looking for the abstract shapes contained within those areas and drawing them in, that I have been a lot more accurate with my portrait drawings. It's a very strange way to draw. I feel like the features just kind of emerge from the face, but I also think it's a lot easier to detect your mistakes and to correct them. So yeah, I don't know if that will work for you, but this is the drawing method that has helped me a lot with my portrait drawing. For this sketch, I am using a mechanical pencil, Faber-Castell eraser pencil thing, which is really good. I would actually recommend it. It's great if you are working at a small scale like I am in this painting, or if you are trying to erase little tiny details that would be a bit harder with the chunky eraser. The other eraser that I am using primarily in this is my kneadable eraser, which I love, and I actually feel for certain areas the kneadable eraser picks up the graphite much better than the Faber-Castell eraser. And another reason that I like to use a kneadable eraser is you can lift the graphite off of the paper if you tap gently. It doesn't lift all of the graphite, so if you just want to soften up some areas or some transitions, or just slightly lighten up an area that's gotten a little bit too dark, just kind of dabbing it with the kneaded eraser is super helpful. I'm also using a couple of Derwent blending stumps. I use these to smooth out the hatching that I tend to use when I'm doing the first few stages of a sketch, and it just kind of smooths out things and blends stuff together, which is really good. It kind of leaves you with a smoother finish if that's what you're going for. I also find it really helpful to use that for transitioning between light areas and dark areas and kind of getting those midtones in. So at this stage, I am about to start painting on top of my sketch with watercolour, and the reason I like to do this in my sketchbook is that it seals the graphite to the paper and stops it transferring to other pages in the book. This is really nice if you are going to come back to your sketches in a few years, and rather than coming back to them and finding lots of muddy pages and your sketches looking quite worn and tired or ruining the sketches on the other page, it essentially preserves your sketches in the way that the way that they look when you're finished, which is really, really nice. And you can use as little pigment in your watercolour or as much as you want for this technique, so you could do something really, really subtle just to keep that graphite sealed to the page. So just before I get on to the painting, I am quickly going over to make sure that I'm 100% happy with my sketch, because once that water is down, the graphite will not move. It will not be erasable anymore. So you want to make sure that you're pretty happy with your sketch before you go in with the paint. So what I like to do is take the brush and put a really light wash of paint over. I normally like to start laying in the water on the lightest areas of the sketch and working my way towards the darker areas. I just feel like this stops the graphite from smudging into the lighter areas and darkening areas of the sketch that you want to keep really light. So basically when I do this, I like to build up the pigment. I like to lay in more pigment where the shadows are to keep them quite dark and vibrant, and the lighter areas I like to keep less pigment there. And you'll see me quite often go in with a paper towel because I've been a little bit hasty and gotten a bit too excited with the watercolour. And what you can do with the paper towel, which is great, is lift that pigment up off the page. As long as your page is still wet, you should be able to get most of that pigment up there. So I've just dried my sketch and I'm about to go in with the Uniball Signo gel pen in white. I really love this art supply and I use it quite a lot in my sketchbook. The ink in this pen is very, very opaque, so it's great for drawing on top of dark areas to lighten them up. The biggest downside that I have encountered with this pen is that it lays on very thick, which obviously makes it more opaque, which is great, but when you're using it on top of watercolour it can look quite harsh, and because the watercolour is flat with the page and it's more of a stain, this can look a little bit messy. And yeah, I mean, you might like it, but it's not for me. So what I like to do is just take a brush with a little bit of water on it, and you can go over that gel pen and just use that ink basically like you would with gouache or another type of ink. The reason that I like to use this method in my sketchbook is it's sometimes just a little easier to use a pen than to set up a palette and squeeze some of your gouache out the tube. And if you're anything like me, you will always use far too much gouache and end up wasting it all. This is just the way I like to work. I also think that because the nib of the pen is quite small, it's really good for accurately placing your highlights in. So basically I just use the pen in the brightest areas of the sketch and laid it out to make those transitions a little smoother. Another thing that I'm doing in this is I am slowly building up the darkest areas again of the face. So I'm trying to use a little more pigment in my orange watercolour to build up the layers. This makes them a little bit more vibrant and it makes the colour pop a little bit more. You can also use the watercolour back over the top of that ink that you've blended out just to get the blend even smoother, or maybe to darken areas if things have gotten a little too light. The whole time that I'm doing this, I'm still paying very close attention to the kind of abstract shapes that the light and shadows create on the face. I wanted to add in the suggestion of Kyle's shirt. So I'll add in a little bit more of that white pen and use a cross hatching method and then paint over the top to blend that all out. I think that helps lift them off the page a little bit and maybe makes them stop looking so much like a floating head. Another thing that I decided to do was to go in and darken up the background, making it really vibrant so that the colours popped, and again to just help them stand out from the paper and kind of lift them off the page. I think it worked quite well. The reason that I picked orange for this particular sketch is because I have painted Jack Black above him, because I wanted to have both of my heroes together on the same page. I used the exact same method as this to paint Jack. I wish I had recorded it, but I didn't because I'm an idiot. But yeah, I mean, I literally used the exact same method as I'm using here to do the first one. And I went with a nice vibrant orange to paint Kyle to contrast with the blue that I used for Jack. And I think the colours complement each other really well, and it's turned out a really fun page in my sketchbook. So yeah, I really hope you like it. So here is my finished Kyle Gass painting, and there is Jack right next to him, or above him rather. I think they look pretty cool together, and this is probably one of my favourite pages in my current sketchbook. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please let me know in the comments. Let me know where I can improve. I hope that you've enjoyed my art, and I really hope that, yeah, this video has been useful to you in whatever way, or you've just enjoyed relaxing and watching it. Thank you so much. Catch you later.